Well, hello, dedicated Switch for Good listeners, and a big welcome to all of our new listeners out there. I'm Dotsie, and my partner in crime, Alexandra, is still on a break from being the hard-charging activist that she is, which is sad for me because I miss her, and I know for you all too. So I'm going it alone today, but I promise you this episode will be a juicy one. We are going to talk running, cancer, sex, aging, boobs, the Olympics, and of course, food. We have the most incredible Dr. Ruth Heidrich on the show. And wow, she packs a punch with so much info for us to pull from. We are going to end the hour smarter, more aware of our choices, and learn what trailblazing at 87 years young looks and feels like. So let me dive in and introduce you all to Dr. Ruth. There are few things in life more terrifying than getting a cancer diagnosis. You know your world will never be the same, and every choice you make thereafter is of critical importance. And so it was for our guest today, because after receiving the news that she had stage 4 breast cancer at the age of 47, marathoner Dr. Ruth Heidrich made what was considered at the time to be an incredibly brave and unorthodox decision. After answering an ad to participate in a cancer and diet research study conducted by Dr. John McDougall, she immediately chose to adopt a whole food, plant-based diet and forego chemotherapy and radiation. Well, 2 years later, she was in remission and became the first vegan to complete the Ironman Triathlon. Dr. Heidrich received her PhD in health management. She is a certified fitness trainer. She holds 3 world records for fitness in her age group, and she was featured in the documentary Forks Over Knives, so you might remember her from there. She has also written, wait for it, 6 books, competed in 67 marathons, won 8 gold medals in the U.S. Senior Olympics, and has been named one of the 10 fittest women in North America. Woo! Wow. I really could not be more excited to have this 87 years young superhero with us today. So welcome, Dr. Ruth, to the podcast.
Thank you, Dottie. It is a pleasure to be here. And by the way, I'm 88. And
oh, you've had a birthday since our research.
Next month, I'm going to be 89. So I can talk about aging.
Incredible. Thank you for the correction, everyone. Wow, it just continues to make it all the more impressive.
When you get up that high each year, it makes a difference. So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think I just heard a voice on your side, like a Siri or something, but.
Yeah, I have this reminder every 15 minutes to get up, because you've heard this, sitting is the new smoking. And when I hear that every 15 minutes, it's if I can't stand, and I won't be now, right, I'm going to flex my quads and my glutes and my pecs.
I love that. We are not going to cut that out because that is so cool. So every 15 minutes in your waking hours, it goes off and you do what you just said and move the bod.
Yep.
Oh, that is classic. That is classic. All right. So we're gonna traverse so much, like I mentioned, and definitely your exercise regimen and routine. But I want to start, if I may, start with your breast cancer diagnosis. That was obviously a pivotal moment in your life and led you down a path where you are today, an expert on so much having to do with a whole food plant-based diet. But share with us your breast cancer diagnosis, right? Which had spread to your lungs and bones, if I'm not incorrect, at the age of 47. And how it changed your life. But those words, you have stage 4 breast cancer. There's listeners that can definitely relate. Share us with how you felt.
Well, it started with, I was 4th of July at the beach with my family and my favorite aunt. And of course, I had a bikini top on, and I was leaning over, and she said, "Ruthie, what's that lump in your breast?" And I looked down, and it was, oh my gosh, it was like it had popped up overnight. I couldn't believe it. And so I immediately made an appointment to go see a doctor. And he said, "Oh my God, why'd you wait so long to come in?" And I said, "I just found this. Plus, I've had mammograms every 6 months and they're all negative." So, anyway, he said, "We're going to do a biopsy right now." And so he took me into the surgical suite and got me all ready. And I said, "I want to watch this." And he said, "Oh, no, you don't." I said, "Yes, I do. I can't have cancer. I've been a runner for 14 years. I've run marathons. I'm so fit. There's no way it could be cancer. And I just want to see what that is." He said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And so when they were getting ready to prep me, the nurse started to put a screen. And I said, "No, I'm going to watch." And she said, "Did your doctor say you could?" And I said, "Yes." So he comes in and
Wow.
gets me ready, starts cutting and cuts and cuts and cuts, and takes out this whole lump, which is literally that big.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, he puts it on the table, takes a knife and scalpel and cuts it, and little grains of sand fall out. And he says, "Uh-oh." And I almost come up off the table. "What do you mean, uh-oh?" He said, "Oh, that's not a good sign, but we won't know. We're going to send a sample down to pathology and they'll take a look. In the meantime, I'm going to sew you back up and you get dressed. And when you're dressed, come back in. We'll have an answer by then." So I'm getting dressed and I'm, confident. There's no way I could have cancer. I'm 47. I'm fit, healthy. So I walk in and his office and the chair he's in is facing the window. And so as I just get to the doorway, I hear him say, "Infiltrating ductal carcinoma." And I
Ugh.
knew what carcinoma meant. And I just almost fainted. I was speechless. I was stunned. And I somehow managed to sit down. And he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that." And I didn't even get clear margins. So it's bigger than the 5 centimeters that we originally thought it was. It's a lot bigger than that. So we're going to schedule you for a mastectomy and then, of course, chemo and radiation afterwards. And so the next thing was to get a bunch of the tests, the scans, the bone scans, which were positive for bone. My liver enzymes were supposed to be in the 2 digits. They were in the 4 digits. And I found on the x-ray that they had a lump that was kind of ill-defined, and we're going to biopsy that. That's what started everything. Okay. And I went home and I told my husband what it was, and we both cried. It was just really, yeah,
so this shook you, no doubt. I can't write. Yeah. So many that have had that diagnosis and remember that moment and those words and how they felt. So for you, this was 1982.
Right.
And you were already a runner, right? Like you said, for 14 years and thought you were eating very healthy.
Let me tell you about Kenneth Cooper. Have you ever heard of him? No. Okay. He is the founder of aerobics. He wrote the first book.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. Right. This book right here, Aerobics, Kenneth Cooper. He's the one who started this whole exercise movement in 1968.
Okay.
And that kicked off. And the word means many other things, but back then it meant exercising any of the major muscle groups and for health, the heart, the lungs, everything else. I read that book in 1968 and it made so much sense going through it. And I went for a run the next morning and I ran to the end of my street, turned a corner, another block, and ran back up. And when I finished, I thought, oh, I feel fantastic. Oh my gosh. So the next morning I did it again and again. And got to the point where I would get up at either 4, 5, or 6 in the morning, run before going to work. And so that was my usual routine. And after a while, like in 1970, somebody said to me, there's a race. I was working at Hickam Air Force Base at the time. I'm a retired Air Force logistics officer. That was my background. So he handed me this race flyer. And so I entered it. And that was my first race. And I got hooked on racing. So I had even been racing, but I hadn't. It was no medals or anything. It was just kind of for fun.
You were just staying fit and doing what the book said.
Yep.
Yes.
And so about 3 days after the breast cancer diagnosis, I had taken medical leave and was reading the local newspaper and came across this tiny little, I don't have it handy, I should have. It's a 4-line ad, and it said diet and breast cancer research. And if you have had or have breast cancer and want to participate in this research, call, and it's Dr. John McDougall, and it's a Kailua number. And if you know Oahu and Hawaii at all, it's close by. And I thought, perfect. So I run to the phone and call. And his wife, Mary, he was just getting started back then. And the two of them had this small office. He had just finished his residency. And he'd been a plantation doctor on the Big Island. A plantation doctor takes care of all the employees, and there are a lot of immigrants and Japanese, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese. And what John McDougall saw at the time was a difference in the 3 generations. The oldest, they were healthy, never needed anything. The middle, not so much. And the children, fat, diabetic. And he knew diet was so important. And he thought that affects cancer as well. So when he finished his tour there, he came back to Kailua on Oahu. And that's when he decided that chemotherapy and radiation do not cure cancer. They don't even necessarily keep it from coming back. And I am positive, because he looked at animal studies and epidemiological studies, population studies, and big differences in the rates of breast cancer. And he says, okay, I'm going to prove that it's diet and that can either prevent cancer, prevent recurrence, or treat it if you've got it. And so he explained all this to me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I can always get the chemo radiation. He said, no, because when it works, they're going to say it was the chemo and radiation that did it. You cannot have, so you have to make a choice. No chemo, no radiation.
No hormone blockers, nothing, just completely clean.
Back then, they were really new. I mean, I think there was only one, and they were still doing a research on it, tamoxifen.
Okay,
had not really been approved, and so he showed me the data. At this point, I hadn't finished my PhD, but it was in psychology, and that was my way of wanting to help with psychological background counseling. And so he pulled out a file drawer and he says, you're welcome to spend as much time as you want looking at the research that I base this on. And so he spent a full 2 hours with me. When was a doctor ever going to do that? And I even saw his wife, Mary, who told me about how to fix the food, no oils and whole foods, basically. 2 hours later, I walked out of there a vegan. And there was no looking back whatsoever. The only real problem was my husband. And now I say then husband, because he totally rejected the idea that the diet was the answer.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's, yeah, would not, he said, I gave you credit for more intelligence than that.
Oh,
And, and that just, oh, and so he said, you've fallen into the hands of a quack. It's a cult. I mean, this went on for days and weeks, and so I said, I'm not buying any animal, no bacon, no eggs, no cheese. And so he started doing his own shopping and said,
hmm.
okay. And so you look at our refrigerator, and one side is all my food, the other is all his food, lobster and butter. He wasn't going to give up anything. And so what I noticed was the symptoms, the bone pain went away within days. And the next blood test, he looked at my cholesterol levels from the blood work that I'd had. And he said, with a level of 236 total cholesterol, you are at as high a risk of dying of a heart attack as the breast cancer. And I said, wait just a minute. No, I run marathons. And he said, nope, you high cholesterol clogs the arteries, and that gives you heart disease. But he said, don't worry. He said, when you change your diet, that changed, that went away. My next blood test was 17 days later, and my cholesterol had dropped to 129, 236 to 129.
Nice work.
He looked at that and he said, I can tell you didn't cheat. I said, cheat? Why would I cheat? And he said, you'd be surprised.
You're facing life and death.
Yeah, but other women face life and death, and they can either walk out and say that, like my then husband, it could be, or they try it for a little while and then they say, oh, I can't do this anymore. But so I was his first patient who I think really took to it and showed these fantastic results. And further, what I found out was my running was so much more efficient. Recovery was fast. I was running further, faster. And my next marathon, and I had run a bunch of marathons at that point. My next marathon. 9:45.
You got to get up and do some squats or something while you're on the podcast.
Yeah. No, I'll just, you can sit and do flex the quads and quads.
Okay, so, of course you can. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, my next marathon was Honolulu Marathon. Took 17 minutes off my last.
Oh wow, that's huge.
That is huge. And further, it's right across from Waikiki Beach, and I went for a nice swim afterwards. Whereas all the other competitors are just exhausted and want to sit or lie down, go to the massage tent, and were sore the next day. When they had the award ceremony, they could hardly walk. And here I totally recovered. And I thought, this is amazing. The difference the diet makes, not just in cancer, not just in heart disease, but in my sport of running.
Yeah, your repair, your recovery, your energy, your sleep.
And not long after that, this was in July when I was diagnosed. And in October, I'd heard about the Ironman Triathlon, which is, as you probably know, started right here in Hawaii.
Yes.
And having been raised, we lived on the beach in Lanikai, near the ocean. At 3 years old, I had learned how to swim. So when I saw what the Ironman consisted of, a 2.4-mile swim, and I thought, oh, I can swim. I can do that. And then the 112-mile bike. Well, okay, I'll get my old rusty bike out of the garage and I can start doing long runs on the bike. And of course, the marathon, I thought, I'm going to do the Ironman Triathlon. Well, again, 1982, nobody had ever heard of this. It was so rare. And they hadn't heard of vegan either. Nobody could pronounce the word. It was vegan, whatever. Right. Yeah. So you had to qualify. You can't just sign up for the Ironman. And you have to have, well, there was a half Ironman. I did a tin man the first year in 82, which is like 1/4 of all the distances, and got a first place in that. The next year I did the tin man and the half Ironman and got 2 first places in those 2. And that half Ironman was a qualifier for the Kona Ironman. So I was eligible for it and ready to take it on, because again, it was try to show people, look what this diet is. And, you badmouth it and say you can't do that, or it's going to be deficient. You can't possibly get enough calcium, and no dairy. What? Everybody knows you got to have dairy milk for your bones. And so I just thought, well, I'll show you. And sure enough, yeah.
Proliferated into everything that you did past curing cancer. So let's go back to the cancer. So 2 years of eating this way, you got a completely clean bill of health. And I would imagine almost felt like you had a new lease on life, even though you were feeling amazing and you knew it was working and the numbers were going in the right direction.
Yep.
Right. To really get a clean. So currently today, and obviously from that day one, you eat a low-fat vegan diet to prevent cancer reoccurrence.
Right.
What other lifestyle recommendations do you have specifically for women, let's say, with breast cancer, besides a low-fat, whole food vegan diet? I'm going to guess you're going to say some good movement, right, and exercise. But are there anything, given your background, psychologically, that you did different than others that you recommend for those who might be listening who are dealing with a breast cancer diagnosis?
Well, psychologically, there was no depression. There was some anxiety for a while, is this working? But I looked at what I was doing and it is working. And I didn't know then about BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which makes you feel good. That was working all the time. So psychologically, I was
what is that?
Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. When you exercise, your brain produces this. You've heard of the good feelings you get from exercise, and that's the endorphins, and you feel great. And so I had all that. My sleep was better. I wasn't having the bone pain in the middle of the night where in fact, prior to the diagnosis, I had gone to the doctor about this bone pain, and they gave me actually narcotics, some kind of morphine, and that didn't even work. So all of a sudden, no drugs, and the bone pain disappears. So that helped. And I just, and at 47, guess where I was in my cycles? Perimenopause. Yeah. And so I thought, menopause, hot flashes and irritability and dryness and all kinds. And I just really never gave it another thought until several years later. And I looked back and saw, I went through menopause and, just no periods and I didn't even know what a hot flash was. In fact, you've probably heard in Japan, they don't even have a word for hot flash because back then, especially, all the other countries are changing their diet as they try to simulate a more Western diet, more meat and eggs and dairy. And so in Japan back then in the 80s, they were still pretty pure rice and vegetables. And so those women went through menopause with no problems. So, and even today, on my website, I have the Ask Dr. Ruth. We can talk a little more later about that. And so women are talking about how menopause and the problems they have in osteoporosis. And so again, it's the diet that makes the difference. So,
hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want.
When you became vegan, whole food, plant-based, your chronic constipation, osteoarthritis, which you were taking medicine for at the time, dandruff, and adult acne all disappeared.
Yeah, I was on medications for all of those things. Constipation, and I did complain about that because of having to strain and knowing I had to go, but I couldn't. And they said, well, 3 or 4 times a week is normal for some people.
Oh, dear.
And so when I started giving talks to people, their first question was, how soon did the diet start working? And I smile the next day. And they said, what?
That's a good sales pitch.
I'd been constipated all my life and didn't know it.
Wow.
And oh my gosh, that one aspect of it was so wonderful, just to take care of that little problem.
My cousin had the same thing, and she now that just completely turned around her constipation, going whole food plant-based, and now she travels with cans of beans in her checked luggage everywhere she goes, just to make sure she can get how much fiber she wants every day. And one time I met her in Vegas, and I look over and she's in the bed. We're getting ready to watch a movie, and she cracks open a can of kidney beans and is just eating them with the spoon. She's like, I haven't had enough fiber today, but if you want to go, she's like, if I want to go to the bathroom, this is how it has to happen.
In one of my books, I say, if you take reading material into the bathroom with you, you're not getting enough fiber.
That's great. That's so true. Yeah, we're like one and done. There's no time for any of that in there. Yeah.
Yep. The perfect poop,
Yes.
And the adult acne, I now know, is not just from too much fat, but especially animal fat, because all the hormones that come with, and it's like adolescence all over again. You're getting too much estrogen and even testosterone. So when you change your diet, the acne goes away, low fat. And the dandruff.
I had that happen.
I was taking, my dad suggested when I was in high school that I use this shampoo called Selsun. I don't know if it's still on the market. Is it?
Selsun Blue, or I remember it. I remember the ads.
And so Dr. McDougall said, he told me all these things that are going to disappear. And sure enough, no more dandruff. So,
my skin completely cleaned up. I had acne my whole life, went through 2 rounds of Accutane, which is, I don't know, I think they've almost outlawed it now. Now it's so dangerous. But it was exciting to have it clear up just from diet alone and not have to be, taking any medications anymore. Interestingly enough, I'm going to just pivot here because I don't want to miss this. We're still going to stay on the breast, but you had at least 3 sets of implants. And I'd love for you to tell the story of your implants for women who might be struggling or suffering with theirs, because you wrote a book called Breast Implant Illness, A Living Nightmare.
Okay, do you want to get into that?
We're going to.
A whole new chapter in my life. Okay, back then, again, 1982, Up to that year, they had almost always been doing the Halsted radical mastectomy. They believed that cancer could travel through the muscle. And so they took not only the breast, not only the skin, top and bottom of the breast area, but also the pectoralis muscle. And if you can imagine what these poor women looked like after that, it was just horrible. Thankfully, my surgeon says we do a modified radical because we don't think that cancer travels through muscle. And so that's what I had, was a modified radical. The word reconstruction wasn't even in their vocabulary. So after talking and consulting with other doctors, they said, because you're at such high risk for cancer in the other breast, we would recommend that after this first modified radical, we do a simple mastectomy on the other side. Mm-hmm. And then possibly there's some research showing that there can be some reconstruction, but we'll have to wait a year because, as I mentioned, all the skin from the top of the breast area to the bottom, they take that. And so when they pull that together to suture the skin together, it's so tight that they have to wait a year for you to have enough skin so that they could put an implant in. So for a year, here I am doing races and in not a bikini top anymore, but just a one-piece bathing suit, which for triathlons, you're worried about aerodynamics and hydrodynamics. So I was so embarrassed by having this flat chest and thought, oh gosh, it just seemed like a salvation. I'll be normal looking again. Mm-hmm. And so I would pull the skin and stretch it out. And I went back to the plastic surgeon 6 months later, and he says, no, not yet. There's no room for an implant. And so 9 months I went back, and he said, oh, yeah, I think we can get an implant in there. And so there was never any question that this was a perfect answer to having breast cancer, being, quote, normal, or at least looking normal. So a year later, I have these new implants. What I didn't know, and that's what's in my book, all the questions I should have asked and had no idea that I needed to ask. And it's like you cut the pectoralis muscle. At that point, they were putting all of them on top of the muscles, the pectoralis muscles. And so it didn't affect your strength very much, a little, but not much. And then with the next set of implants, they had discovered that there was less capsular contraction if they put it under the muscle, the pectoralis muscles. But because it's so tight, it depending on the size of the implant, and I just wanted my normal B cup, which is what I was before, not a C cup. I wasn't going for big. I just wanted normal. But they still had to cut the pectoralis muscle. I never thought to ask.
It's 10 o'clock.
I never thought to ask, is this going to affect my swimming speed? And can it be repaired? And so, yeah, so many other questions didn't ask.
And so I'm sure that it did. You had some struggles as that began to heal because they had to cut the pec muscle. Your swimming times must have gone down a bit.
Yeah, but I was still being successful in races, and I didn't feel it that badly. So the third and fourth, and one day I was running, and this was in 2014, I was running up a hill and fell. It was like I tripped on something, and I was sitting there looking back. What happened? How come and then my arm, it was very painful. And I looked down, and my saline implant had ruptured when I landed on the ground. And so I get an ambulance ride to the hospital, and and I'd broken my arm, which was bad enough, but on top of that, the saline implant had to be replaced. And so when I went to the plastic surgeon, he said, we've got these new implants, the textured implants. There's no capsular contraction, no saline liquid rupture, and they're wonderful. So I said, okay, let's do it. So a few days later, I had these Allergan textured implants. I didn't realize what was happening because what was really happening was there were microgel bleeds from the implants. Also, my immune system immediately detected a foreign body and starts attacking that. And so I was having more fatigue, some insomnia, balance problems. I couldn't think of, there were so many things going wrong. And I thought, oh, it's just aging, because by this time, I was.
But this is where the living nightmare comes in with the implants, things that no one would ever, I wouldn't even ever think of.
Nope. And I was sure that, but no, it never even occurred to me.
Right.
This was going on. I did go to the doctor, and I had just been on a cruise. And when I got off the ship, I had this permanent feeling of rocking and losing my balance. So and it was kind of scary. So I went to the doctor, and he gave me one of the drugs. I don't know what, the one like you put on your ear to.
Oh yeah, for when you're at sea, like behind your ear, or right.
Yeah, and another medication. Nothing worked. I was still rocking like on high seas. And so I learned, it got a little better. So I learned to live with that. And there were other things going wrong. And it was always, it's either stress or your imagination, or the most common one was age. And of course, by this time in my 80s, I had been vegan for 30 some years, and none of my doctors ever had a patient like me. That, they had no idea of the power of a healthy vegan diet. So that was what was going on. And I was on a trip to Canada, Vancouver, and happened to see a newspaper there. This is, I always look at newspapers, to see what's happening. And I picked up this one, opened up, and here's this headline: breast implant illness, a nightmare. And I thought, oh, that's silly. These women who think that it's something. Anyway, I thought, well, I'm going to read it anyway, see what they say. And I got down the list, and I saw symptoms, check, symptom, check, symptom, check, check. I said, oh my God. It was like my eyes opened, and I realized that's what was causing all my problems. I went to the phone, called the reporter, and she herself lived not far from where I was in Vancouver. Actually, it was in White Rock, a suburb of Vancouver. And she said, and I told her about my experience. She said, you've got to get these out right away. That's what's causing the problem. It's only going to get worse. And she said, I'll give you the name of my surgeon. And so I called the surgeon, and he says, yes, we'll take them out right away. What's your MSN? And I said, oh, that's like your social security number in Canada. And I said, oh, I don't have one. I'm an American visiting, but I want to get them out now. He said, oh, I'm sorry, without an MSN, I can't do it. I said, private pay, whatever it costs, I will do it. He said, I still can't. He said, it would invalidate my malpractice insurance. I suggest you get back home as soon as possible and get them out. So,
okay.
That was the beginning of my living nightmare.
That was just the beginning. So you got them out, and then it got much worse.
not much worse.
Okay.
Yeah. I kept waiting for all these symptoms to disappear, for my hair to quit falling out. And it's still.
It took time.
Yeah, because what I have found out is there are so many heavy metals, and from 2014 to 2019, all those years of the microgel bleeds, leaking heavy metals, lead, mercury, cadmium, aluminum, all these arsenic, and I was having heart palpitations, and just everything was going wrong. And I kept thinking, I got the implants out, that I've got to get better. Well, the surgeon who took them out here in Hawaii didn't believe in breast implant. Again, this is early stages, in 2019, when before the specific implants had been banned and recalled. It was just 4 months before ABC, NBC, CBS, all the mainstream on the 5 o'clock news, all of them covered it. Breast implants recalled, banned and recalled.
Oh boy.
And so 4 months prior to that, he tried to talk me out of it. He said, it's your age, and I showed my mottled skin, all the problems. He said, oh, my uncle has that. Dismissive of all my symptoms, just like all the other doctors. So I insisted, and he said, well, I'm going to leave the skin and the capsules in because I'm sure you're going to change your mind and have new implants, not the banned ones, of course. And I said, no, I want to, take the capsule out.
Yeah.
Well, and I said, and I, like the biopsy, I want to watch, I want to be awake. I do not want general anesthesia. He said, we always do in general. It's not a problem. It's safe. I said, no, I want to be awake. I said, you can give me enough lidocaine when you take them out. And that way I want to hear the conversation. I want to know what's going on. And so they did start an IV, and I said, I don't need an IV. And they said, oh yeah, for safety, it's required medical practice. We have started an IV in case something goes wrong. So I had the IV, and I'm listening, and he gets the left one out, and he gets the capsule. But on the right one, he has more of a problem. He told me later that it was stuck to the rib and so close to the lung that he said, at this point, he turns to the assistant and he says, put her out. The last thing I heard, because the general anesthetic. And so I missed what all he said. But he told me afterwards, he said I couldn't get all the capsule out because it would risk puncturing the lung. And I did not want to do that. So I think that's why you have to get, they call the procedure en bloc, French meaning ENBLOC. En bloc, you take the whole thing out, one capsule. So no leakage, no particles of the capsule left, because it's just as dangerous as the implant, the silicone itself. The problem is these heavy metals get circulated from head to toe, including the brain, including the mitochondria. That explained the chronic fatigue I have. The damage to my ADH, it's the hormone that tells your kidneys, go to sleep at night. Normally, you don't have to pee during the night. But as you age, sometimes it's once or twice, men and women, once or twice. But what's happening to me was getting more and more frequent. And so it is now every hour, literally. I go to bed at 9 now, try to get more sleep. And at 10 o'clock, I have my smart assistant, Alexa. If I say too loud, she'll say yes.
Right. Don't wake her up.
Yep. Yeah. And so I pee so often that I want to know, is it time to go back to sleep or is it time to get up? That's how messed up my sleep cycles are. And that's how I know that at 10 o'clock, 11, maybe 11:15, 12, maybe 12:30, and it's from 3 o'clock normally, I can go till 5. And so that's when I get up. But I'm lying there, eyes closed, and I get so tired. I'm just exhausted. And don't be depressed. Come on. Think of your gratitude. You are alive. I'm so tired. I think just wiggle your toes. Just wiggle your toes. You can do that. So I start progressive every morning. Every single morning starts out like this. So I wiggle my toes, and then I spread my toes, and then I do the ankle pumps and the ankle circles, and the BDNF starts working, and I can feel the energy starting to come back up. And I do quad sets and glute sets, and then I do the bridge. I used to do, you know what the plow is? If you've done yoga, I was doing that in 2013, 14. Back in the early 20s, I was doing the plow and broke one of the vertebrae, had a compression vertebrae, and I thought it was a pulled muscle. But the pain was so bad, I just barely got into bed, and the pain didn't go away after 3 days. So I went to the doctor, they took x-rays, and they said, you have a fracture in your T12 vertebrae. And I found out that when you're in your 80s, you should not be doing some of these yoga moves. The plow. So I didn't do any more plows, and I still
figured that out. But you got solutions to so many scenarios that you've been through in your life that you've figured out yourself, which makes me want to move to sexual health, because you have also written a book on that, Prevent, Reverse, and Cure ED, 10 Steps to Total Sexual Fitness. So our most popular podcast episode on YouTube of all time is with Dr. Aaron Spitz, who you might remember from the Game Changers and the Penis Study. And he's the penis doctor, literally wrote the book on it. And society, is just so focused on men's sexual health. And there's like 4 main medicines they made for men, at 30 years ago. And we just got a few approved, for women, FDA approved not too long ago. Yet 4 in 10 women report having serious sexual concerns. So why don't women get the attention men do in the sexual function category?
Well, it's true of everything.
True.
All the research is oriented, not all, obviously I'm exaggerating, but it seems like by far most of the research, white Caucasian males, and then slowly more and more females, and then the brown and the black subjects being tested. But with women, sex is never as quite important as men, because they identify so much with their infections.
10, 15.
So, okay, squats.
Squeeze the glutes.
Squeeze the glutes. Yeah, the biceps too. So, and I realized that tiny little penile artery, the size of the head of a pin, doesn't take much to get that clogged. And also, Dr. Neil Barnard, are you familiar with Neil Barnard?
Sure. Yeah.
I was actually in Vancouver again, giving a talk, and I was in the wings, and he was on stage, and so I was listening to him. I had just met him. This is 1990, and so he said he was talking about erectile dysfunction to a group of medical students, and he threw out the statistics. By the age of 40% of males have erectile dysfunction, and the heads, all of this medical students threw in, whoop, he had their attention. And I saw that, and I thought, makes sense. Men identify with that very strongly. So on my website, I have the Ask Dr. Ruth, and they confuse me sometimes with, do you know the other Dr. Ruth?
Yes, Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Yes, I remember her.
And so I get emails from men and women complaining about their sex life. Mm-hmm. And my one answer is, don't see a psychologist or psychiatrist. Don't do exercise, change your diet. And that's and I got enough of those questions. I thought, I can put all this in a book because there are other steps. It's not 100% diet. It's just mainly diet. It's going to clear up the arteries, and that this applies to the clitoris, which also has a tiny, tiny little artery and a vein. And without it functioning, orgasms are more difficult to reach. And so I thought, okay, here, back to diet again. It is so important for every function in the body.
So women experience their own variation, if you will, of erectile dysfunction. Is that true?
Yeah, the clitoris. Yeah.
Right. But it just doesn't, when stimulated, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's a homologue. In embryos, when babies are forming, before the dominant testosterone or dominant estrogen start forming in the baby, they both look the same. The testicles and the ovaries are in the same place in the embryo. And it's only as this sexual differentiation occurs that the testicles descend out and the ovaries get functional. And the same with the penis and the clitoris.
Right. So it's a blood flow problem, just like it is to the penis, it is to the clitoris.
Yes.
Which is why diet can be a real savior in that category.
Game changer.
Yeah, right. So tell us the 10 steps to total sexual fitness. You've mentioned a couple. I'd love to know the 10.
Let me see. It's been a while since I read the book. See, I don't think I remember all 10.
There's all right, give us 6.
Yeah. I don't have it handy, but it's still, everything boils down to the diet. It's so critical. Everything else, sleep, of course, is important, and exercise. So those are the other two. And I do have recipes that I've put in there for people. I also know the benefits of an all raw diet, the 80-10-10 diet. People who don't like to cook and want healthy meals that don't take a lot of preparation. And I think it's a good diet if you want to do that. And I did it for a while. And so.
Yes. So then one of the steps to total sexual fitness is definitely diet. So help us with that by letting us know, what is the day in the life of Dr. Ruth's plate look like? What do you eat in a day?
I am the speaker coordinator for the Vegan Society of Hawaii, and I get to have all the top speakers come to Hawaii. We pay their travel expenses and have them present to us. One of our speakers was Dr. Brooke Goldner, who was in medical school, had lupus.
Yes, and she's been on our podcast twice, so our listeners know her.
So you know her history. Well, yeah. The audience may not, but she dealt with lupus and this systemic symptom and figured out that it was diet. So when she came in early 2019, when I was still going through all this, I asked her after her talk, and I told her about my breast implant illness. And it's like the autoimmune similar to lupus. And she says, green smoothies. And she had lectured about how to do green smoothies. So I started doing those. So back to what I eat. I have, and Caldwell Esselstyn are you familiar with him? Reversing Heart Disease. And he talks about chewing leafy greens for nitric oxide, which opens up the artery.
Yes,
yeah.
blood flow.
And, yep, for his heart patients, the ones that the Cleveland Institute gave up on, he has them chew on leafy greens 6 times a day. Not just the 3 meals, but when you get up, and it's for snacks in between. And so I was doing that as well. So, but the green smoothies, oh my gosh, it takes me, the main meal is lunch. So I start with garlic, crushed garlic, and you wait 10 minutes. So the allicin forms with contact with oxygen. This much ginger, half a root of gin into this Vitamix, and then flax seeds, chia seeds, and then I go to the leafy greens. I have a friend who works at an organic farm. She's a retired physical therapist, and she brings me what I order, and it's always kale, arugula, collards, Swiss chard, beets with the tops associated with the beets. They don't cut them off and put them away. And eggplant and all these great veggies. So that's the main part of my diet. But in the green smoothie, again at lunchtime, all those leafy greens, and then I have fruit. And sometimes it's bananas or mangoes or papaya.
And you're putting all of this into the smoothie mixer for lunch?
No, the Vitamix stopped with the leafy greens. It's packed to the top of the leafy greens in my big bowl. You know how they used to have salad sets, the salad bowl, and then the small servings around it, like smaller this size. My meals are always in the big salad bowl, that big.
So where's this garlic and the ginger? Are you sauteing that? Or is that in the salad? Is that in the smoothie?
It's raw. It's raw.
Okay, so it's in your salad.
Yeah. Well, I don't even call it a salad because it's a green smoothie. And the ginger, and turmeric.
So that's all going into the green smoothie. So for lunch, you don't chew food. It's everything you just stated goes into the smoothie.
As I say, it stopped with the packed with leafy greens. In my big bowl is where I have a banana, papaya, or mango, whatever fruit, sometimes oranges. So the fruit and the bananas are what are the main dishes in the bowl, and I pour the green smoothie over that. I use a little over a half of the Vitamix for that. For supper, what I've been having
garlic
lately,
over papaya. I don't know, Dr. Ruth. I am going to. I'm not sold.
I forgot the prunes. The prunes.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org. He talks about the research that shows that prunes are better than any other fruit, like dates or raisins, for bone health.
Yes.
And obviously for regularity. So
definitely.
And the research showed 7 to 8 prunes a day. So I put 4 in the Vitamix and put 3 in the salad bowl.
All right.
And so there's no sugar rush. Everything is the blood sugars, it just rises slowly and stays right at a healthy level and drops just before your next meal. So that's my supper. Is another third of the green smoothie on top of my purple sweet potatoes from the Okinawan diet, the blue zones.
Yes.
Yeah, the Okinawan.
And purple sweet potato.
And as an Air Force logistics officer in my travels, I went to Okinawa and I learned about the Okinawan diet and the purple sweet potatoes, and I saw how healthy the people were. And when it hit the blue zones, I thought, oh, we grow those here, purple sweet potatoes. So I order, in fact, it's coming tomorrow. It's being shipped out today from the Big Island of Hawaii. And it's a 19-pound box of the purple sweet potatoes. And I have an old-fashioned crock pot.
I love.
And these are the fingerlings, the baby ones. And I fill up the crock pot and cook those for 2 hours. And that's the substance of my suppers every night. It's so quick and easy. I take a bunch of the purple sweet potatoes and put them in my big salad bowl, along with eggplant or squash or whatever they've been growing on their organic farm. That's my main, the sweet potatoes and the vegetable, and then some more green smoothie. And that's my supper.
Oh, goodness.
And dessert is fruit, either cherries, frozen cherries, of course.
Okay.
Strawberries. I like berries, keep that. I like the expression, you always should have vitamin C coursing through your veins. 3 for meals, 3 days a week. The organic cucumbers, organic cucumbers. What's the other one? Bell peppers.
Yes.
Always organic. So that's my supper. In the morning, there's this much smoothie left from the day before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So for breakfast, I start out with goji berries.
Okay.
Because you've probably heard of macular degeneration.
Yeah.
And the drug that's advertised on TV, AREDS2, for the zeaxanthin and lutein, that's high in that. Some research that I saw says that goji berries beat out the drug, the supplement that the ophthalmologist recommends. So I have a handful of goji berries and a cup of blueberries, frozen blueberries. My freezer always has 3 bags. When I get down to 2, I order another one. I want to make sure I never run out of brainberries.
Yes.
Blueberries. So, and then let me see what else. There's something. My hemp seeds. Whole hemp.
Yes. I love the hemp seeds.
Yeah. And a handful of walnuts. And then I pour
both packed with protein if people are having the protein question sifting through their heads right now. Hemp seeds and sesame seeds, 2 ounce for ounce.
Yep, those 2.
Right? They're
two.
so high in protein, and sesame seeds ounce for ounce are higher in calcium. The dairy milk, and a lot of people don't know that. The sesame seeds are, you can also make tahini from them, right? Which is delicious. Drizzled on anything, or, I always tell moms that are like, oh my gosh, well, how will I get little Johnny calcium? And, you can't really tell a mom who's just starting this, just, give Johnny kale and spinach. He's not going to start chomping on kale and spinach when he's been having McDonald's. And so I say, do the tahini right. And he can dip his little chips or carrots in the tahini. And that's all the calcium you could ever need. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When I'm adding the garlic and ginger and the chia seeds and flax seeds, I didn't think of that immediately because my sesame seeds are up here on the shelf, whereas all these other things are in the refrigerator. So I do have a tablespoon of the sesame seeds as well. I love them.
It's 10:30.
Yep.
Oh,
so
there we go.
There we go.
A little exercise, but
okay.
That is amazing. That I think everybody, I know I was extremely curious. Okay, what does a day in the life of Dr. Ruth's plate look like? So that's incredible. That's very specific too. And thanks for all the tips on why to eat many of the things that you mentioned in your smoothie and your bowl.
Yeah.
So you have such passion. I mean, you sound like you're 30. It's just your openness and your knowledge. And I gotta say, your brain's working like a 30-year-old for sure. It was so fun to have you on and traverse a few very different subjects, where the cure for all of the different subjects was, what you put in your mouth every day.
Dr. McDougall, always, it's the food. It's the food.
Yeah. It is what we do the most.
The taste. You've heard of mindfulness and maybe mindful eating. There's a book on it. Yeah. And enjoying the taste. And every meal, it's like it's a first time to taste the flavors. They crunch on the dried goji berries, the flavor, the blueberries, the leafy greens. After, I talk to people trying to get them to eat more eat some leafy greens.
Yes. Yeah.
And they say, oh, I hate kale. My brother-in-law, I hate kale. Even my brother, come to think of it, used to say that. If you take a half a leaf of kale and chew it for a while, your salivary enzymes produce enough enzyme to make it taste almost sweet. And the flavor comes out. And I can't imagine people not liking kale.
Keep chewing, people, because the sweetness is going to come out of your kale if you do.
Exactly. That happened. And what a discovery that was, how much I love. And goes back to Caldwell Esselstyn and reversing heart disease and the nitric oxide, that it's like getting a fix when I chew my leafy greens. They just taste so good.
You want to run outside and take a run. I know I like to run and do a mountain bike ride with my husband and beat him after I have a 16-ounce beet juice, fresh beet juice with the nitric oxide, because he doesn't like beet juice. So I can chug mine and say, okay.
What about the whole beet?
Yeah, well, I just like to drink it before I go.
Oh,
I don't know. I just have kind of learned. I mean, I eat beets all the time in my salads, and I like pickled beets for the fermentation and the gut microbiome, but it's just, juicing it. Maybe it's the hydration. I just have gotten used to that. Like before I go ride, and then I'll eat them whole at dinner.
Yeah. And that's when people talk about juicing. I talk about the whole food.
Definitely. Yeah. No. It's not the only way that I get them. I have some pickled beets right now in the farmer's market that I'm going to go put on my salad that I'm going to make right now with some hemp seeds and chia seeds on top.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for being with us. Alexandra's going to be sad she missed this, but I know she'll listen. I know everybody got so much out of it. Thanks for your inspiration, for being you.
Thank you, Dotsie. It's been a pleasure. And I love talking to people about the food. It is so vitally important, and so few people really know this. And there's movement to get this into medical school. I did manage to get Michael Greger at the local School of Medicine here, JABSOM, the John A. Burns School of Medicine.
Yeah.
And he gave a noontime lecture, and we packed the auditorium. And I want to get him back, because we need to get to the doctors, because they're the ones that really.
Yeah, it's so cool. So that's where people are still listening to them for nutrition advice, which is kind of odd, but that'll probably continue. So let's pack them with the knowledge.
That's what's next on the plate, is to try to get more education out, especially to our medical people, because they're so important in what people believe and
end up doing. Right. Yeah. They have like a kind of a godlike scenario in people's lives, in many people's lives. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for all you do to make the world a better place.
And thank you for all you do. The Game Changers was a fantastic. I hear when people talk, I tell them, watch Forks Over Knives. They haven't heard of it. I said, you've heard of the Game Changers, right? Well, Forks Over Knives came before.
Yeah, way before. Before. I just sent somebody that Forks Over Knives just a few days ago, whose husband just had open heart surgery. It's time for them to make a radical change. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah. So we're working on it.
Yes, we are. Yes, us and everyone listening. All right. Until next time.
Okay. Thank you, Dotsie.